I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. I was shy, I was withdrawn, and I internalized anything said to me and about me. And also had a difficult relationship with my mother. There was a lot of fat shaming. I grew very depressed and began to eat more, and I became a bigger Brian. As what so often happens now at school, the bullying started. It was right around then that I remember starting to see nothing but this fat pig in my reflection in the mirror. And so, as you might imagine, I was very happy to get away from Pittsburgh, PA, and go on to Penn State University. I was going to be this new person who would be loved, who would have friends, who would get to do all the activities that he didn't get to do in high school. But nothing changed. In my mind, every kid who looked at me was seeing this fat pig and this unlovable person who would never be one of them. And in my mind, the only way to get their acceptance to be one of them was to get thinner. And I transitioned into binging and purging going into my sophomore year at Penn State. I began to use alcohol to quell my feelings of depression. And that was the first time where you could say I was a quote unquote alcoholic, alcohol use disorder. And I got into Pitt Law, and now we're in 1983. I walked through the doors, and I remember looking at all the law students, and in my mind, they're all looking at me and going, "We know you, Brian. We see right through you." So that is kind of how I went through Pitt Law, just day-to-day, moment, drinking, running, binging and purging. I took the Pennsylvania bar, miraculously passed. I moved to Dallas, but my drinking escalated, and I didn't tell anyone about my issues. In the summer of 1987, I discovered the one thing that for the first time in my life, I looked in the mirror and I loved who I saw. I discovered cocaine. Cocaine and alcohol took over my life. In the summer of 2005, I became so despondent that I decided to end my life by suicide. My younger brother, Jeff, showed up. Mark flew in from LA. They dragged me kicking and screaming on my first of 2 trips to a local psychiatric hospital. And I said the right things. They couldn't hold me. They take me back home. My solution was not to step into recovery, but to distance and isolate myself from everyone. Before you knew it, I was back out there. Everything came to a head in Easter weekend 2007. I had met a wonderful woman named Amanda. She goes away to visit her parents. Next thing I know, it's a couple days later, she's staring down at me. I'm in bed. There's cocaine everywhere. There's alcohol. The next day after she moved out, I walked into my psychiatrist's office, who I'd been lying to, seeing for 2 years. I started opening up to him about all of the pain and just regurgitate, just letting it out, crying and sobbing and just shaking out the years of just pain and tears. He said, "Brian, we have to get you sober. Would you consider residential treatment?" And I wasn't ready for that yet. "Would you consider going to 12-step?" So I said, "I'll go to 12-step." And when I first walked in there, I sat down, and sitting in that chair, here's what I did know. If sitting in that chair this one time would allow me to wake up the next morning, look in that mirror, and love Brian without the aids of any illicit substance, cocaine, alcohol, or anything, for the first time in my life, I would sit in that chair. And I continue to sit in that chair. And I continue to go to those meetings. I know I have a platform that can save one life. I reach somebody with my message. That person reaches somebody else. That person reaches somebody else. And that's just not me. That is why so many people put their stories out there, to impact one person. And then hopefully that person impacts one other person. That is known as a recovery movement. Recovery can happen. We are not our thoughts. When we're sitting alone in isolation and all of these negative thoughts are playing on each other, there's no one. Fight through those negative thoughts. Make a list of the people who love you and that you love. Reach out, because that first connection could be all it takes in that first step towards a different way of life, a more fulfilling life, and whatever recovery means to you.